Travel back in time to 1956 with The Searchers, a Western masterpiece etched into the annals of cinematic history. But beyond the sweeping landscapes and unforgettable performances lies a deeper, untold story. The real lives of the actors who brought this iconic film to life. They were a constellation of talent, each leaving a unique imprint on Hollywood. On screen, they were larger than life, but behind the scenes, many of them faced personal battles far more harrowing than anything scripted. Illnesses struck without warning, accidents rewrote destinies, and hidden struggles simmered just beneath the surface, never fully revealed to the public eye. What followed the film's release was not the everlasting glory some might expect, but a series of haunting twists of fate. Their off-screen lives unfolded like tragedies worthy of the silver screen. Raw, emotional, and often heart-wrenching. This is the untold story of The Searchers' beloved cast, of how fame couldn't shield them from fate, and how their real-life journeys became just as gripping, just as unforgettable, as the characters they once portrayed. Olive Kerry, 1896 to 1988. As Mrs. Jorgensen in The Searchers, Olive Kerry stood as the warm, steady matriarch, a contrast to the rage and cold vengeance that swirled around her. She brought an earthy honesty to the role, a deep well of womanly strength worn into the lines of her face. Once a leading lady in silent westerns, Olive had been eclipsed by time, drifting into the shadows of her husband, legendary director Harry Carey, and their son, Carrey Jr., who would carry the family legacy forward through John Ford's inner circle. But behind the wholesome image was a woman who endured devastating loss. The sudden death of her husband in 1947 shattered her world, and though she never remarried, she spent the rest of her life as a widow cast in stone, her days dimmed by absence. She watched as Hollywood changed and her roles dwindled, replaced by younger faces and louder stories. Yet she kept acting, clinging to it like a memory of youth. In the end, age closed in slowly, like a desert twilight. She passed away in 1988, almost anonymously, at 92, her heart worn thin by years of surviving everyone she had once loved. John Wayne Ethan Edwards, born in 1907. He rode through the American West with grit in his eyes and the silence of vengeance hanging on his shoulders. As Ethan Edwards, John Wayne gave what many consider his most complex and haunting performance, a Confederate veteran consumed by rage, racism, and obsession. Behind the tough exterior of Hollywood's quintessential cowboy was a man who lived a life equally dramatic, but far more fragile. Wayne's career spanned over 5 decades, with classics like Stagecoach, The Quiet Man, and True Grit cementing his status as an American icon. Yet, off-screen, he struggled with multiple failed marriages and a growing distance from his children, including a famously strained relationship with his son Michael, who worked as a producer but could never quite earn his father's approval. Wayne's health deteriorated under the weight of his lifestyle. A lifelong heavy smoker, he was diagnosed with lung cancer in 1964, losing a lung and a few ribs in the process. Though he recovered for a time, it was stomach cancer that claimed him in 1979. He died quietly in a hospital bed, his body finally surrendering after years of defiance. The same hospital where he had once undergone surgeries alone, refusing sympathy. Despite his image as a pillar of strength, Wayne passed away burdened with regret, whispering to loved ones that he had spent too much time chasing the wrong kind of immortality. Jeffrey Hunter Martin Pauly, born in 1926. He was the wide-eyed youth, the moral compass to John Wayne's tortured Ethan Martin Pauly, the adopted nephew torn between loyalty and conscience. Jeffrey Hunter brought warmth and sensitivity to the role, a foil to Wayne's brutality in The Searchers. Off-screen, Hunter seemed poised for stardom, a strikingly handsome actor who would later portray Jesus in King of Kings, 1961, and was even the original captain in the first Star Trek pilot, The Cage. But behind the camera, Hunter's life unraveled in slow, painful increments. His marriage to actress Barbara Rush collapsed under the pressure of fame and differing ambitions. Though they had a son together, the bond grew strained as Hunter's career began to falter. Roles dried up, and the actor drifted into lesser-known foreign films, struggling to reclaim the momentum he once had. His final years were marked by instability, both professional and personal. In 1969, a mysterious onset injury in Spain left him with a concussion. Months later, while walking down the stairs at his home, Hunter collapsed, fracturing his skull. He never regained consciousness. He died at 42, far too young, far too forgotten, from a cerebral hemorrhage, leaving behind a trail of what-ifs and a son who would grow up with a father remembered more in celluloid than in presence. His death was not just a tragedy of the body, but of a dream slowly extinguished. Henry Brandon, 1912 to 1990. In The Searchers, 1956, Henry Brandon embodied the chilling, enigmatic figure of Scar, Cicatriz, the Comanche war chief whose very presence sent shivers through audiences. His portrayal was haunting, almost spectral, and rooted in a lifetime of transformation and disguise. Born Heinrich von Kleinbach in Berlin, he was forced to reinvent himself early on, adopting a more acceptable American identity in a film industry that had little tolerance for foreignness during the rise of anti-German sentiment. Over a long career, he played villains with a dark charisma, the sinister Silas Barnaby in Babes in Toyland 1934, the calculating Fu Manchu type in pulp serials, always on the margins, never quite allowed to be the hero. Off-screen, Brandon lived a deeply private life, carefully veiled. As rumors swirled about his long-term relationship with actor Mark Herron, who later married Judy Garland, a bond never publicly acknowledged in a hostile era. That secrecy was both a shield and a wound. As the decades wore on, the roles shrank and his name dimmed. In 1990, he died from a heart attack, alone in his Los Angeles home. His life closed behind a curtain of discretion. The applause long faded, leaving only the echo of eyes that once stared so piercingly from the shadows of the screen. Ward Bond, Reverend Captain Samuel Johnston Clayton. Born in 1903, Ward Bond carried the unmistakable presence of a man born for the saddle, commanding screens with a rugged integrity that perfectly fit his role as the authoritative but oddly compassionate Reverend Captain Samuel Johnston Clayton in The Searchers, 1956. A frequent collaborator with director John Ford and lifelong friend of John Wayne, Bond was a familiar face in westerns and war films alike. With roles in Fort Apache, Drums Along the Mohawk, They Were Expendable, and even a small but memorable part in Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life as the town cop Bert. Behind the scenes, though, Bond's life carried a quieter tragedy. While his professional persona was loud, imposing, and full of bravado, his personal life was far more muted. He married Doris Sellers Childs in 1954, a union that brought companionship but no children. His dedication to his career left little time for intimacy, and though his marriage lasted until his death, the shadows of loneliness often followed him. In 1960, during a brief break from filming his hit TV series Wagon Train, Bond suffered a massive heart attack in a hotel room in Dallas, Texas. He died alone, far from the sets and screens that had defined his life, and with his name eerily omitted from many of the tributes paid to bigger stars. He was only 57. His death sent ripples through Hollywood, a quiet reminder that even the sturdiest cowboy can fall suddenly and unseen. Ken Curtis, 1916 to 1991. Ken Curtis brought an aching, awkward sweetness to Charlie McCory, the bumbling suitor who tried to win Laurie's heart in The Searchers, 1956. His charm was genuine, but behind his drawling voice and cowboy gait was a man forever caught between music and myth. Before his acting days, Curtis sang with the legendary Sons of the Pioneers, replacing Frank Sinatra on Tommy Dorsey's radio show for a time. An odd, almost surreal brush with fame that never quite stuck. He married John Ford's daughter, Barbara, and though that union should have bound him to Hollywood royalty, it was fraught with friction and dissolved after only a few years. Curtis struggled to define himself outside the orbit of stronger figures. Ford, his former father-in-law, Festus Hagen, his beloved yet typecast role on Gunsmoke, and while adored by fans, he was often dismissed by critics as comic relief. His later years were spent in semi-obscurity, touring state fairs and Western conventions, forever smiling, though the twinkle in his eye seemed tinged with a kind of tired sadness. He died in 1991 of a heart attack, quietly, without headlines or tributes. The voice that once crooned through the American radio now silenced, like a cowboy riding off without a goodbye. Natalie Wood, Debbie Edwards, age 15. Natalie Wood was born in 1938, and from the moment she stepped into the spotlight as a precocious child star, she seemed destined to shimmer forever. At age 15, she played the kidnapped Debbie Edwards in The Searchers, embodying both the innocence lost and the fragile hope of a girl stolen by violence and prejudice. The role foreshadowed her own life, which was so often caught between bright Hollywood lights and the shadows that lurked just beyond them. Wood's luminous talent continued to glow in Rebel Without a Cause, Splendor in the Grass, and West Side Story, where she radiated heartbreak and longing. Her personal life, however, was defined by turbulence. Her marriage to actor Robert Wagner, twice sealed and twice strained, was marked by jealousy, infidelity, and whispered rumors. Natalie struggled deeply with fears of drowning, an ironic and haunting detail that became prophecy. On a November night in 1981, while on a yacht off the coast of Catalina Island with Wagner and actor Christopher Walken, Natalie disappeared. Her body was found hours later, floating face down in the water, wearing only a flannel nightgown and down jacket. She was just 43. The circumstances remain a shroud of mystery, with official reports oscillating between accident and suspicion. Her mother, Maria Gurdon, had once pushed her into the world of fame, but even her love couldn't protect Natalie from the brutal solitude that fame often brings. Her daughters were left with memories and a grief that never quite settled, while the public still mourns the girl who never truly got to grow old. Carrey Jr., 1921. In the wide, unforgiving landscapes of John Ford's The Searchers, 1956, Carrey Jr. brought warmth and decency to the character of Brad Jorgensen, a young man deeply in love, who ultimately becomes a symbol of innocence lost to the cruelty of the frontier. Born into the world of film, his father, Carrey Sr., was a famed silent Western star. Carrey Jr. inherited both the silver screen and the haunting loneliness that sometimes accompanied its glow. His early years were steeped in the mythology of the American West, shaped on his parents' ranch in California, but his true devotion was to the camaraderie of Ford's stock company, appearing in westerns such as Three Godfathers, 1948, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, 1949, and Wagon Master, 1950. Despite his jovial screen presence, Carrey Jr.'s life was marred by the shadow of living in his father's cinematic shadow and the long, slow eclipse of classic westerns in Hollywood. His marriage to Marilyn Fix, the daughter of actor Paul Fix, lasted for decades, though it was not without the quiet struggles of a man caught between eras, too modern for the Old West, too old-fashioned for the New Age. His career, though steady, never reached the peaks it seemed destined for, and he often watched the roles grow fewer as the genre faded. His children were spared the harsh lights of Hollywood, but Carrey's heart remained tethered to the dust and dreams of Monument Valley. In 2012, he passed away at the age of 91, not with the bang of a gunslinger's last stand, but with the gentle hush of a man who had long since become part of the myth he helped create. His death from natural causes may have been peaceful, but for those who remembered the glint in Brad Jorgensen's eye, it felt like the closing of a chapter soaked in longing, regret, and quiet, enduring love. John Qualin, 1899 to 1987. In the 1956 Western epic The Searchers, John Qualin brought a quiet, trembling dignity to the role of Lars Jorgensen, a gentle Swedish settler who longs for peace in a brutal world. A frequent face in John Ford's stock company, Qualin was often cast as the humble, meek outsider, the Norwegian farmer in The Grapes of Wrath, 1940, the watchful muley in Casablanca, 1942, always slightly hunched, eyes darting with worry, as if he were carrying a secret sorrow. Born to Norwegian immigrants in Canada, Qualin bore the burden of cultural duality, never quite fitting into Hollywood's golden mold. His life off-screen was marked by loneliness. Though married, he spent long stretches away from his wife Pearl, living out of suitcases in small apartments, drowning in the silence between roles. His daughter, Joyce, brought him some light, but as work dried up, so did the light in his eyes. In his final years, afflicted by Alzheimer's and almost completely blind, he wandered through the fog of memory, a ghost of the man who once shared the screen with giants. He died in 1987, forgotten by many, his voice silenced, though it once trembled with such unforgettable vulnerability. What do you think about the deaths of the actors from The Searchers, 1956? And who do you remember the most among them? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our latest videos.